everybody. Welcome to episode number 120 of the Debt Free Dad podcast. So, inflation right now is a hot topic. Prices are rising on a lot of products, especially when it comes to filling up your gas tank. And I just filled up my gas tank on my truck, and it was $100, which is crazy. And buying food for your family. My wife just told me the other day, in fact, yesterday, that she went over $200 over budget on groceries this past month. And I, too, have been getting the questions, Brad, what are some tips? What are you guys doing to help with inflation? We're going to be talking all about that and some strategies on today's show. Stay tuned.
Welcome to the Debt Free Dad podcast, where we're helping normal, everyday people learn how to save money and kick debt so they can live a happier and stress-free life. Now here's your host, Debt Free Dad, Brad Nelson.
Hey, how is everyone doing today? You can find me on Facebook, Pinterest, YouTube, and Instagram. Just search Brad Nelson, Debt Free Dad. And welcome to today's show. So glad that you guys are joining us. Remember to get all the resources, show notes, and links for today's show. Head over to balancedcents.com/120. That's BALANCEDCENTS.com/120. And before we talk about today's topic about inflation, I just got to talk about another topic we bring up a lot here, which is all based on emergency funds. And actually, before we hit the record button on today's podcast, we were talking about just some fun expenses that have come through some of our households. And one for us just this past week was we completely lost our heat. And of course, you know, I live in Wisconsin. It's the end of March. And of course, it's got to be the coldest couple of days in March ever, right? And we have no heat. So for about 3 straight days, we had zero heat in our house, and we were staying warm with space heaters and a fireplace. Thankfully, we had the fireplace. But I got to tell you guys, that was quite the challenge. But anyways, almost $7,200 bill for a new HVAC system, new air conditioner. And admittedly, we knew that this was coming up. It wasn't our budgeting plans to have done in the fall, but unfortunately, that did not work out. And sadly, it was so gross going to the bank, guys. You go to the bank and they give you all that money, and it's like, they're like, oh, I hope you're doing something fun with this. And I'm like, I think you're doing something fun with this. I was like, no, I'm not doing anything fun with this. I'm fixing my house. Like, that's not fun, right? And especially, like, it's a furnace. I just want to get, like, a folding chair and a beer and just look at it right now, right? Because it's like, you just spent all this money for a hunk of thing that sits in your basement, right? It's like, home ownership, man. I was telling these guys before we recorded, I miss renting for these reasons. It's crazy.
I think it's just because we're brothers. I think we got slammed at the same exact time because we just had the same thing. We had to replace the entire system, AC, compressor, outdoor, everything together. It was just time. We were not planning on it at all because we have a furnace service. They come twice a year. They check everything. Last year we didn't have any like, hey, warning signs. Hey, this is going to go. But the furnace just went. It was going to cost. It's almost 20 years old, and it was like, you know, so again, we had to dip in deeper into we have more of a 6-month emergency fund. And just like that, I hated taking the $1,000. Yeah. I really hated taking this because it's like, this is going to take some time to build back up, you know? And now we have to push off some kind of wants. Like I wanted a new shed. I had all these big plans for it. And now we got to push all that off. So.
Yeah. Speaking of wants. So, if you guys have been listening to the show, you may have heard my whole show on Lego, and, they just came out with the Back to the Future DeLorean. And now I can't get the DeLorean because I got to refund my emergency fund. So I'm a little pissed off about it, honestly, if you want the truth. But hey, here's the silver lining. We didn't have to go into debt, but it still hurts. So for all of you out there, when you guys say, I had to build my emergency fund, or I had to use my emergency fund, it sucks, now I got to rebuild it. Like, hey, we feel you. Like, we're dealing with the same stuff. So today, guys, we're talking all about inflation. All right. And I just want to kind of talk about just a few points real quick before we get into some of the strategies, I guess, that I'm kind of doing, in our house, and maybe just some general things that might help you guys out. Some of you guys might already be doing this, but first of all, what is inflation? Inflation is a general increase in prices and fall in the purchasing value of money. All right. So essentially, what $100 could buy you last year cannot buy you this year because prices go up, the value of your money goes down, right? That's essentially what's happening. And at the end of the day, the point of this show is, and I hope we come across with this with the Debt Free Dad podcast, is to eventually get yourself to the point of the habit of wanting to work on your finances all the time instead of just when times are tough. And I see this all the time. I saw it at the start of COVID. I'm seeing it with inflation where people are starting to like get this sense of panic because gas prices are going up and food prices are going up and basically everything's gone up. And for those people who are living paycheck to paycheck, it's really putting a squeeze on you, right? And you're starting to feel that squeeze, and that squeeze is causing you to be like, okay, we got to do something about our finances. The first thing I want to tell you guys is stop reacting to everything, and instead, you have to go on the offensive when time is good. And that way, when you get to events like this, yes, it sucks to have to put $100 in gas into my truck. But at the end of the day, I'm not choosing between that and actually feeding my family, though. 12 years ago, and we're going to talk about this, when 2008 hit and, the recession happened, I was driving a Jeep Wrangler. I was driving about 50 miles to and from work, so 100 miles a day. Gas was about $4 a gallon, same price as it is now, right where it is by me. I couldn't even keep the Jeep because I couldn't afford to put gas in it because I was so broke. Now today, 12 years later, because of all the work that we've put in leading up to this point, yeah, does it suck? Yes. Is it an inconvenience? Yes, but it's not, the end of the world, right? So, for those of you who are feeling that crunch, like remember this feeling and take this with you after this starts to subside, because you need to just continuously make your finances a priority, and the next crisis won't be hopefully nearly as bad. But I want to read this. I want to just read the snippet of an article I found in an article on Bankrate.com written by Brian Baker. It says, Warren Buffett's business partner and vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, Charlie Munger, has his own take for how to best cope with periods of high inflation. He says this, quote, one of the great defenses to being worried about inflation is not having a lot of silly needs in your life. I love that. Munger told Berkshire shareholders back in 2004, in other words, if you haven't created a lot of artificial demand to drown in consumer goods, he says, why you have a considerable defense against the vicissitudes of life. And if you're wondering what the hell that word means, because I didn't know what it meant, it means a change of circumstances or fortune, vicissitudes. Typically one that is unwelcome or unpleasant, right? So basically, what is he getting at, guys? I mean, basically he's getting at, don't be overspending. Don't be living this luxurious life or filling your life with these frivolous purchases. And as long as you don't do that, you're not going to feel the effects of inflation nearly as much. You're still going to feel it to some degree. I think there's no way you're going to escape it, but you're not going to feel it nearly as much. So you guys have any thoughts on this? Like how inflation has hit you guys just as living as debt-free households and what your feelings on it are so far?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's not, and I don't say this to be, pompous or arrogant, but it like you said, it stinks. I don't like having to put a bunch of gas in my car, spending more money on gas. I don't like, spending more money on food or spending more money on some of the things we've done. On the HVAC system we just put in, it's not cheap to do some home stuff right now. But it's not affecting us in the fact that we can't do it, or that, like you said, where we're having to choose between, paying a bill or getting gas. When we were in debt in that paycheck to paycheck lifestyle, I mean, we had everything, all of our money contributed to bills. So like we were lucky to have $20 left in our checking account between paychecks. So if suddenly you're paying $200 more a month in gas, it gets really tough to make decisions really fast. And exactly like you said at the beginning of the podcast, you get into crisis mode of like, oh, what are we going to do? What are you going to do? And then when gas prices go down, it's like, oh, we don't have to do anything.
Right. Exactly.
It wasn't until we fixed everything so don't get me wrong. I don't want inflation. I would love it to go away. I want things back, normal prices like we were paying, but my day-to-day lifestyle isn't being disrupted due to it.
Right.
For us, it just kills me to pay so much for butter. Like I'm like butter, eggs. Like I'm like these staples. I'm telling you, I am couponing and I'm checking deals and I'm shopping smart. And that's That's just how it's affected us. It's taking me more time to do my groceries.
Yeah, I think you right. I think you take a step back and you look at. I mean, we were just talking about this tonight. In fact, right before I came down here, I was eating dinner. Sarah made dinner early for me, so I come down here to record this, and she was talking about my coffee that I drink. I love Dunkin' Donuts coffee. I don't go to Dunkin' Donuts to get it. I drink it at home, and she's like, literally 2 months ago, it was $12.99. Then it went up to $14.99, and she's like, now it's up to $17.99. So I'm like, okay, how much is the cheap stuff? She's like, you're not drinking the cheap stuff. But for real, yeah, she's doing the same thing. So she's like, I got to go to a different store because at the different store, it's probably cheaper. I'm like, but that different store is going to be like an hour to and from. You got to pay gas and your time to get there. It's like, is it even really worth it then at that point? To save maybe $3 or $4, right?
It all depends. It really does.
It does. It really does. Right. It really does depend. But, I think some of the points that we want to share on the show is just to, I guess, highlight again the stuff that we talk about on the show on a regular basis, week in and week out, are the exact things that you need to be doing to, if you want to use the words inflation proof, your finances. So things like having a plan and doing a regular budget, right? Prioritizing your spending, very similar to the quote that I just read to you, is that you're not filling your life with all of these frivolous purchases and, things that are just mostly wants and all of those things, right? Having a regular budget allows you, just like you said, Amber, it allows you to kind of, again, and like you said, Ryan, it allows you to flex a little bit and kind of go with what's kind of happening. As much as you don't want to pay those prices, you can at least bend without breaking in either direction, depending on what those prices are going at, right?
Well, it's so visual though, right? Because you have the budget and you're looking at it and you see, okay, whoa, our grocery bill is just all like it's creeping up, it's creeping up. If you weren't paying attention to that, you'd be like, dang, where's all my money going?
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't be front of mind.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think, for sure you'd be able to, like you said, you're couponing now. You're looking for better deals. Like, I think, if you have a budget and you're very mindful of the money that you typically would spend and you start to see those prices increase, you're much more aware of that there's a difference happening within your budget if you're doing it consistently. The other thing, too, is if you have a written budget, you can start to figure out, okay, so maybe we adjust in certain areas to adjust for these fluctuations, right, that are happening. So that's very similar to what we're kind of doing. Like we have sinking funds set up for different savings accounts and things like that. And we are making some adjustments, right? Like we're not like going to save as much for home repairs because right now that money's going to be going back to build our emergency fund. But like, we're making those small adjustments within our budget to adjust for those higher prices of gas and groceries and so on. Right. So when you have that budget, that's the key to this. Like you're able to bend without breaking. You're able to make those fluctuations and it takes a lot of the stress and guessing out of it. And then if you're short still, you can make some decisions. Okay, what are some things that we need to do? Either I'm going to have to pick up some extra hours or we're going to have to make some extra income somewhere. But rather than just saying, I hope this works and finding out at the end that it didn't, that's how you get yourself into debt. So I think budget, to inflation-proof your finances and help you through a situation like this, a budget is priority number one, in my opinion. One of the next best places to beat inflation is to build your emergency fund as well. Because in a situation, like for instance, where you run short, like groceries, my wife said, we're $200 over budget on groceries. Now, we have flexibility in our budget where we don't have to dip into our emergency fund for situations like this. I could tell you 10 years ago we didn't, but that is why you need to have an emergency fund savings because for most people, what's going to happen? Well, they don't have an emergency fund savings to fall back on, so what do? They swipe a credit card, and they swipe a credit card, and now it becomes death by 1,000 cuts because you're just using that credit card for just a little bit of extra that's there. But a little bit of extra, that's going to add up over time because I don't think inflation is just going to end in just the next couple of weeks, right? This is going to be something that's going to be around for a little longer, and you got to have a plan for that, right? So emergency funds are super critical during times like this where you're still struggling living paycheck to paycheck or you're paying off debt and you don't have a lot of wiggle room. That emergency fund is going to be huge. So the next area that you can do, and again, this is future stuff. For some of you listening to this, you may or may not be able to do this just yet, but one of the best ways, in fact, the only way to really beat inflation is to be investing your money. See, what happens is that if you let your money just sit, your money loses value by itself just sitting there, right? So if inflation has gone up 10%, that means that if you had $100 last year, that $100 is only going to buy you $90 worth of stuff this year. Because if inflation's gone up 10%, you've lost 10% value on that $100, right? So essentially, if you're investing, your money is growing instead of just sitting there and staying stagnant. That's why, for instance, like if you have a large emergency fund savings, our recommendation is that's a temporary savings account. Like for instance, when we had to get our furnace done, I needed to go to the bank that day to get the money out. I didn't have time to like sell my investments or do anything like that to get this cash. I had to get the cash that day to pay the guys who did the heat bill or did the HVAC system, and it was done, right? But if it's money that's going to be for a long-term goal, that money should be invested. And it could be invested in multiple ways. It doesn't have to be invested in the stock market. You could be investing in real estate. You could be investing in a lot of different things. But investing your money into assets that are going to grow in value over time is a way that you can beat inflation. But unfortunately, here's what's happening for most people who are living paycheck to paycheck. They're investing very little. They're investing into things that are going down in value, in liabilities, right? Things like big car payments and credit cards and, again, random purchases, going out to eat, and all of their disposable income is essentially going to things that bring no value back into the dollars that they have. So one of the best ways to beat inflation is to get to the point where you have a good chunk of money every single month that you can invest into your future to help a portion of your income grow over time. Obviously, that's what retirement savings is, college savings, and so forth.
This one was a little bit, when we, especially, for people, if you're getting close to getting out of debt, this one was difficult for us to do at first because you are so used to not having money. So then when you start being able to have the money to invest, you want to hold on to it because it's like, I feel better if there's just this much in savings or this much in savings. And pretty soon it's like, I'm never comfortable no matter how much I have in savings. So you really gotta, it's almost like your $1,000 emergency fund. You got to force yourself to say, I'm comfortable with this amount. And now I'm going to start investing. And we had to really force ourselves to do it because we didn't want to let it go because we were afraid, that we were going to need it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a big thing for you guys, Amber, because you guys have made a big priority in investing now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when inflation hit and all of the extra gas prices and all that, I'm like, I really had to move around my budget to make sure we were still saving enough. And that's, you don't want to cut that out.
Right.
That's a big, important thing that you're doing for your future.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. The next one, guys, you're not going to be surprised by this one, is just paying off your debts, right? Your debt payoff plan will likely slow down a little bit as we go through inflation because obviously you have to adjust for the higher prices. But that doesn't mean that you can't make progress. I mean, heck, in Roots Personal Finance, we have members, and as we're recording this episode, it's like the end of March, and we have members who joined just back in like mid-January. And I mean, Kelly Tyson's one that come to mind. She's 60 years old. She joined to help them get their finances ready and get themselves set up for their later years in life. And here they've saved and paid off well over $7,000 in just the last 2 months. Right? I mean, that's huge progress. So it doesn't mean that you can't have progress. It just means that you got to pay attention to this stuff a little bit more, adjust, have the budget, and do the stuff that we're talking about on the show. And you could still be able to pay off debt, still be able to have a little bit of fun money, build your emergency fund, whatever step you're at, and still be able to reach your goals. So, but inflation, how to inflation proof your finances for the future is just, you got to keep yourself out of debt, especially high interest credit card debt and consumer debt and things like that. The sooner you get yourself out of those things, the better your financial life is going to improve. All right. The other thing too is when it comes to making purchases, I wouldn't. It's going to kind of sound hypocritical because I just bought a furnace, but I wouldn't recommend buying any like major big purchases right now unless you have the money to do it. Right? That's different. Like if you've budgeted, you've saved, and you want to go on a vacation, or you're going to do a home remodel, or you're going to, that's different. If you have the funds and you've properly planned to do it, by all means, if you want to do it, do it, right? Even if it's going to cost you more, if that's your thing, then do it. But if you're, say, not in that position and you don't have the money, like buying a car right now, probably not the best idea, right? Major home repairs, especially like things like wood and all that stuff. I mean, everything is just risen in costs. Like it's just costing you more money to make those types of purchases. Car repairs, right? Car repairs have even gone up. So obviously I wouldn't avoid any necessity type car repairs, like if it's going to keep your vehicle safe. But if you can wait to have certain car repairs done, then I would suggest just waiting as long as you can to hopefully wait for prices to drop just a little bit, right? And if you do have to make a big purchase, it's all about doing your homework right now. Shop around. Like I couldn't believe the difference that I got. And I mean, this is all the time. It's not just during inflation time, but you know, I couldn't believe the difference in quotes that I had gotten for my HVAC system. I mean, there was one that was a $5,000 difference between the one that I went with and another person that quoted $5,000. That's crazy. So, you know, shop anything that you're going to be purchasing. Make sure you do your homework. I would not be really fast in any decision making, especially if it's a big purchase right now. I would really just make sure you're getting the best price if it is a purchase that you are going to make.
Oh yeah, going back to your buying a car or repairs, be careful on the holding off on the repairs. My husband's working on our daughter's car right now. 10-hour job in the shop normally, so about $150 an hour. So he's doing it in our cold garage because he's a mechanic, so he can do that. Which she's lucky, but it's worth it to do these repairs over buying a car, even if he had to take it into the shop, because of the car prices right now for used cars.
Wow. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Yeah. True. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want to keep that in mind. Yeah, it's probably cheaper to keep your car on the road than it is to go buy a used one right now in some cases, for sure. So as Amber pointed out earlier, just with couponing, another thing you guys can do is, and I'm sure you're already doing this, but is adjust shopping habits and just look at prices. Stay away from things that are going up in cost. I just read an article, and I don't have the source for this. It was just kind of in passing, but it might be the time to lose a little weight maybe, because I actually read an article that said produce items are items that haven't seen, I mean, some have. Like, I think my wife said avocados are up, and limes, for some reason, she said were up. But everything outside of that was not as high as some of the other items that she's seen. You know, she's
I don't know. I just paid almost $9 for 2 celery roots. And so that's Canadian.
That's
so
Canadian.
Take about 30% off of that. So
right. So I don't know how much. I'm sorry, I don't know how much a celery root is.
I don't know. I thought my jaw dropped when I got to the cash.
Yeah. Well, I mean, keep in mind though. Do you feel like because you're in Canada, we're in the United States. Like right now, what are you guys paying per? You guys pay in liters. So what are you guys paying per liter in gas?
So it's about $5.50 a gallon.
Okay.
Converted to US. That's US.
Okay. So I mean, you're higher than where I am, but that's still pretty high, right? But
yeah, we pretty much match California is what I've seen.
Okay. And as far as your food prices, would you consider your food prices in normal standards higher than when you come to the United States?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So for you guys to see that type of an increase maybe isn't so abnormal then, because your prices are already a little higher anyways.
Yeah, but they're going up, but yeah.
So anyways, that was just an article I read. It just had said that produce was one of those things that hasn't seen as much of an increase as, say, other items that are out there. So I was like, maybe it's time to lose some more weight, right? So anyways, at the end of the day, you can still enjoy life if you're in a good place. And I guess that's the motivation. Like if you're not in a good place, I guess look at this inflation as an example of, let's get ourselves out of this for the next thing that hits, right? Because you can control the majority of the stuff that's happening in your life. You can control the majority of the spending that's happening in your life. So when inflation happens, yes, there are some outside influences that are going to affect your budget. That are going to affect your finances. There's no question about that. But you affect your finances more than those outside influences do. So work on some of this stuff, right? I mean, you can still enjoy life even when inflation hits, when you have less debt, when you have an emergency fund, and you have a financial plan that you're following on a regular basis.
Hey, if you love planners, this is for you. But you know why planners frustrate me? Because they only really get it half right. Now, sure, They're really good and fancy about helping you manage your time, which is really important, obviously. That's what a planner's for. But where they get it wrong is money, the second most valuable resource in our lives. Most planners don't include any financial planning, things like, keeping track of paydays, bills, due dates, spending, yearly expenses, budgets, cash flow planning, debt elimination plans, and goal planning, right? None of that stuff. That's a real pain. And then what? Then you got to create your own in some silly binder, right? And who has time for all of that stuff? So instead, what happens? Nothing, right? A lot of people tend to ignore their finances even more, and things only get worse. Well, that all ends today because I am so excited to announce and release my brand new, totally awesome Debt Freedom Planner. This thing's awesome, by the way. Now, before you say, Brad, I've already got a planner. This is not an ordinary day planner. This is the Debt Freedom Planner, which is a companion tool that works with your day planner, and it's built to help you manage your money, pay off more debt, and melt away financial stress. And I believe this is the tool that a lot of people who want to take control of their finances have been waiting for. So head on over to therealdebtfreedad.com, click on the Debt Freedom Planner in the menu to get access to your planner today.
Hey, what's this I see? I thought this was a party! Let's dance!
All right. That means it's time for the celebrations of the show. And today we are kicking it off with Mabel Smith. Mabel says, I didn't spend any money on unnecessary things. That's an awesome win, Mabel. Congratulations to you. Good job.
Jill Flickinger Brown, I got a $1.60 an hour raise yesterday, and it's already on today's paycheck, plus 15 hours of overtime. State refund came in, so I bumped the emergency fund up to $1,500.
Awesome. Way to go, Jill.
Becky DeMuth added another $500 on my debt snowball and $500 in my emergency fund. My husband got a raise as well. I can't believe the money we were wasting. Oh, well, that's the past and we're moving forward.
That is an awesome win, right? And at the end, I can't believe the money that we were wasting. And now they're making such great progress. Great wins, Becky. Debbie Kennedy avoided stopping for Starbucks for 1 month now. $4 cash in my wallet now still for 2 weeks. That is huge. And I commented on this for Debbie and I chatted with her a little bit. I was like, do you miss stopping at Starbucks at all? She's like, I don't even miss it right now. She's like, I'm like, how long are you going to do the challenge? She's like, as long as I can go. I was like, how cool is that? That's awesome. Way to go, Debbie.
Lindsay Walsh put $1,250 into savings for a bill coming up at the end of April.
Awesome. Great job, Lindsay.
Amanda Lee paid off 2 clothing credit cards this week. Since I've joined Roots in January, I've paid 3 of them and stashed them away to not be used again.
That is awesome, Amanda. Congratulations to you, and congratulations to all of you guys who are working so hard at reaching financial freedom. And remember, to get all the resources, show notes, and links for today's show, head over to balancesense.com/120.
Hey, thanks for hanging out with us here today. We love your feedback, and it also helps us grow our YouTube show. So please give us a like or leave us some honest feedback on this video. And if you want the latest from the show, obviously be sure to hit that notification bell and subscribe to our channel. And for the latest resources, or if you want more information on how to kick debt and financial stress, please be sure to check out the links in this video or head over to therealdebtfreedad.com. We'll see you guys on an upcoming show. Take care.